Have you ever pictured marriage like those perfect movie scenes? Effortless, always smooth sailing.
Yeah, the rom-com version.
Exactly. But then reality hits, and you find yourselves, well, maybe tripping over each other a bit, bumping
Oh,
into some sharp corners.
absolutely. Life happens, right?
Yeah.
Pressures build, differences come out.
And suddenly it feels less like that ideal dance and more like trying to build something really complicated. Maybe you see a few cracks appearing on the wall.
That's a common feeling, definitely.
Yeah.
Things can feel shaky sometimes.
If that sounds familiar, like you are absolutely not alone. The world often kind of sells marriage as this temporary deal, almost, like an agreement you make.
Like a business arrangement, maybe?
Yeah. But what if Christian marriage was designed to be something fundamentally different, something, I don't know, ancient and incredibly strong, something that can actually transform those tough spots instead of just breaking under pressure?
We're talking about God's original blueprint here. Something woven right into creation, much deeper and more resilient than any human contract.
And understanding that difference, that core truth. Well, that's what we want to unpack today, here on the Healthy Relationship Plug.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to explore why marriage is actually God's idea, how his design is supposed to work, and honestly, how getting aligned with that can unlock blessings and strength you might not have imagined.
It can really change your perspective.
Get ready, because this might challenge some common ideas.
Okay, let's get into it.
So you mentioned contracts. Let's start there. Walk us through that typical way we see agreements in, everyday life.
Okay, sure. Think about like your phone plan, or maybe your gym membership, even a car loan. What's the main point of those agreements, usually?
Well, for me, it's about getting something right. A service, a product. I agree to pay, maybe follow some rules, and I expect them to deliver. It feels like it's mostly about protecting my side of the deal.
Exactly. Protecting your rights, maybe limiting your responsibility if something goes wrong, safeguarding your interests. If they don't hold up their end, you look for the exit clause.
Right. It's transactional. You do this, I do that. If one stops, the other probably stops too.
Spot on. It's defined, limited, and focused on self-protection. Now, the Bible uses a very different word for marriage. Covenant.
Covenant. Yeah, that word it feels weightier, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What does that actually mean in this context?
It's way more than just an agreement. A covenant is understood as a divinely created relational bond. It involves solemn oaths, not just simple promises. Often, historically, sacrifice was involved.
Wow, okay.
And think about scope. A contract covers part of life, right? Your phone service. A covenant involves all of life. Contracts have expiration dates. Covenants are intended till death do us part. Contracts rely on courts for enforcement. Covenants rely on character, on integrity, and on God as the witness. You don't just sign your name. You bind your heart, your very life, to the other person before God.
Okay, that's huge. So
Yeah.
walking into marriage thinking contract means I'm focused on my rights, my needs, making sure I'm okay.
Yep, that's the default.
But a covenant mindset just completely flips that script.
It absolutely does. It turns it inside out. In a covenant, the focus shifts dramatically from protecting my rights and limiting my responsibilities to something really radical.
Which is?
Laying down my rights,
Yeah.
actually increasing my responsibilities, and actively, intentionally safeguarding your well-being, meaning your spouse's well-being.
So instead of what's in it for me, or what's the bare minimum I have to do?
It becomes, how can I give my all for you? How can I ensure your needs are met, even if it costs me something? Think about your phone company versus your spouse. You call AT&T when you need something. In covenant, you're proactively looking out for your spouse's good.
That changes everything right from the start. It's a fundamentally different posture.
It is. And crucially, this covenant isn't just between the two people standing there.
Ah, okay. There's a third party involved.
Yeah, exactly. You might have heard that idea of a threefold cord.
From Ecclesiastes, yeah. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken.
That's the one. When a man and woman enter into a covenant marriage, God himself is meant to be that third strand. He's the anchor, the reinforcing core that makes the bond truly strong from the inside out.
Why is that third strand, God being in it, so critical? What difference does it make, practically?
Well, it means the promises you make aren't just to your spouse. You're making those same promises directly to God.
Ah, so if you break that promise to your spouse...
You're also breaking faith with God. And the Bible suggests that has real spiritual consequences. It can affect your relationship with him.
Consequences like hindered prayer, maybe.
That's explicitly mentioned, yeah. Especially for husbands. Peter warns that how a man treats his wife can directly impact whether his prayers are heard.
Wow.
Your unity, or lack thereof, your behavior within that covenant, it's directly linked to your fellowship with God, which makes sense, right? God is unity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. He desires unity. He's not going to fully bless or inhabit an environment marked by strife and division between two people he joined.
So the conflict at home isn't just making things uncomfortable. It could actually be creating distance between you and God. That really raises the stakes.
It absolutely does. It puts like spiritual weight behind working towards unity.
Mm.
Now, this leads to maybe a more challenging aspect of covenant, the idea of death.
Death in marriage. That sounds pretty grim.
I know, it sounds harsh, but think about it. Historically, significant biblical covenants almost always involved shed blood, some kind of sacrifice,
Yeah.
a death.
Okay.
And covenant marriage demands a death too. Not a physical one, obviously, but the death of two separate individual wills to birth one unified partnership.
So it's like a funeral for my own agenda.
For my way.
That's a great way to put it. A funeral for your ego, your pride, your insistence on always getting your way, your self-interest being paramount. All those things have to be, well, laid down, put on the altar, so to speak.
That sounds painful. Like that verse about dying daily. It can be painful, especially at first. You can feel like you're burying your desires, your preferences. But here's a really profound part. If you yourself will, your ego don't die in the marriage. The marriage itself often will, slowly.
But if you die?
If you choose to die to yourself, to lay down that self-interest for the sake of the union and your spouse, then the marriage lives. It actually thrives.
Okay, but what comes after that kind of death? Is there a resurrection?
Absolutely. You find a joy, a fulfillment that's actually much deeper than just getting your own way. It comes from that sacrifice, from laying down your life for the other person's good. And paradoxically, that very process of dying to self, that's where incredible growth happens.
How so?
You become more patient, kinder, you gain self-control.
Yeah.
You actually become more like Christ through that process, like the ultimate character-refining environment.
It makes me think of that cracked wall analogy again. You can slap some plaster on a crack, paint over it.
Right, the quick fix, like addressing a symptom in a contract mindset.
But if the crack is there because the foundation is shifting?
That plaster won't hold. The crack will just show up again, maybe worse.
Yeah.
The death needed in covenant marriage, it's about fixing the foundation. It's dealing with the root issues, the selfishness, the pride, the two wills clashing that caused the cracks in the first place. It's not just patching things up, it's deep character level work.
And doing that foundational work must change how you react in those tough moments, right? Like in a contract mindset, if you do something I don't like, my first instinct is just react.
That's the default human pattern, isn't it? Tit for tat. You withdraw emotionally, maybe I withdraw financially or physically. It's just this reactive cycle.
But in a covenant marriage, grounded in that relationship with God.
But you're still going to be affected by what your spouse does or says. That's normal. You need to talk about it. But your primary response, ideally, isn't just reacting to them. It's responding to Christ in that situation.
So, okay, my spouse says something that really pushes my buttons instead of just firing back.
You pause. You take that breath. Maybe you even pray silently. Okay, Holy Spirit, how do you want me to handle this? What response honors you right now?
Oh, okay.
That's where the rubber meets the road for spiritual growth. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience. It isn't just grown in quiet times. It's forged in the heat of those relational pressures. When husbands are told to love their wives as Christ loved the church.
That's not just a nice sentiment.
Not at all. It's a command to imitate Christ's response, sacrificial, loving, focused on God's will, not just reacting to her flaws or failures in the moment.
And similarly, for wives, when it talks about submitting as to the Lord, it's tying her response back to God's authority, not just blindly following whatever her husband says.
Precisely. Her ultimate accountability is to God. It lifts the interaction out of just a human power struggle and brings God's standard, his presence, his perspective into how she chooses to act and respond.
Let's rewind even further, back to the absolute beginning. You said marriage is God's idea, it's transcendent.
Meaning, it wasn't just a social construct that evolved. God authored it. He ordained it right there in Genesis chapters 1 and 2. And he built specific purposes into it from the get-go.
Right, you mentioned 3, reflection, replication, and ruling.
Yeah, reflection.
Yeah.
Male and female, created in God's image. Marriage is meant to be the primary human picture of the relational nature of God himself. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, distinct persons, equal in essence, perfectly unified in love and purpose.
Okay.
Replication. The command to be fruitful and multiply, not just making more people, but filling the earth with image bearers, reflecting God generation after generation,
Ruling.
exercising stewardship together, operating on God's behalf, caring for creation, bringing his order into the world as a unified team.
And within that original design, God also established hierarchy. That word can be tricky.
It can be, yeah. But it means a divinely established order, a chain of responsibility.
Right.
Adam was created first. God gave him the instructions before Eve was created. God held Adam primarily responsible.
So this isn't about one being better than the other.
Absolutely not. Men and women are completely equal in value, worth, and dignity before God. It's about a distinction in function, in roles. Again, think of the Trinity. The Son willingly submits to the Father. The Spirit glorifies the Son, yet all are equally God. It's an order of function, not value.
So the man's role, ideally, is meant to be, what, loving leadership.
Yes, exactly. A shepherd, a provider in a broad sense, a protector, the spiritual leader for the family, but not a dictator, not a bossy overlord. He's accountable to God for leading his family toward God.
And the woman, she was created as the Ezer Kenegdo, that Hebrew phrase.
Which is so important, sometimes translated helper, but it's much stronger than that. It means something like an essential counterpart, a strength corresponding to him. Adam was incomplete. Eve brought something vital, necessary strength, perspective, wisdom that he lacked.
So a husband who dismisses his wife's input is actually missing out.
He's missing out on a huge part of God's provision for him and their union. God brought her to him because he needed what she brings.
Okay, and her submission as to the Lord. How does that play out practically tied to this hierarchy?
Her primary submission is to the Lord, which then expresses itself in honoring her husband's God-given role. But notice the qualifier, as to the Lord. This implies his leadership should be aligned with the Lord. If a husband is asking his wife to sin or leading in a way that clearly contradicts God's word or character, he steps outside of that God-ordained authority.
So his authority isn't absolute.
It's delegated authority under God. And honestly, men lead best when they are visibly, humbly submitting themselves to Christ first. That provides a model and makes it safer and easier for a wife to honor his leadership.
It's like that airline upgrade story you sometimes hear. You both need to be on the same reservation under the same authority to get the shared benefit.
That's a great picture. You need that shared locator number with God, operating within his design for the unity and blessing and, frankly, the supernatural power he intends for marriage to be fully realized.
And Genesis 3 is the cautionary tale, right? Satan goes to Eve, bypasses Adam, the roles get flipped.
Disaster follows. And significantly, when God shows up, who does he call for first?
Adam, where are you?
Because Adam was the one God held primarily responsible for upholding the covenant and the order. It's a powerful picture.
Okay, so bring this down to daily life. If covenant is the framework, what are the, operating instructions?
Well, Paul boils it down beautifully in Ephesians 5.33. It's kind of a summary statement. Husbands, love your wives, and wives, see that you respect your husbands.
Love and respect. Those are the two big ones.
They are the twin pillars, you could say. Not suggestions, but commands that are fundamental to living out the covenant.
And for husbands, this love, it's not just warm feelings, is it?
Oh, far from it. Biblical love, agape love, is a decision. It's an act of the will. It's choosing to righteously, compassionately, sacrificially seek your wife's highest good, her well-being, modeled after how Christ loved the church, giving himself up for her.
Even when she's not particularly lovable in that moment.
Especially then. It's not based on her performance. It's based on your commitment to Christ and his command. Remember, Jesus said the greatest among you should be the servant. In the marriage context, the husband, as the head, has the greater responsibility to serve his wife's well-being through sacrificial love.
Okay. And for wives, respect. What does that look like?
Respect here means holding him in high esteem, honoring his position, affirming his leadership and confidence. Think about it this way, maybe simplifying a bit. God often wires women with a deep need to feel cherished, loved securely in their heart. Men often have a deep need to feel respected, competent, honored in their mind or ego.
So the command is for each to give what the other most deeply needs.
Kind of like that. He's commanded to feed her heart with love. She's commanded to feed his head, his sense of worth, with respect.
You mentioned Sarah calling Abraham Lord earlier. Not necessarily literally calling him Lord, but that attitude of honor.
Exactly. It's about affirming his God-given role. 1 Peter links that kind of respect to answered prayer and blessing. And conversely, remember, Peter also warns husbands that dishonoring their wives, not treating them with understanding, and as co-heirs, hinders their prayers.
So love and respect aren't just nice ideas. They are spiritually potent actions, like massaging the heart and the head, keeping the connection strong.
That's a good way to think about it. But simple doesn't mean easy. Executing this daily.
Yeah.
That's the real work.
And it is work, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Marriage is work. It's hard, it's tough, it can be strenuous, but it's also meant to be beautiful and incredibly rewarding. The Bible talks about blessings and favor that come from following God's design, this covenant.
And consequences for ignoring it.
Yeah, potential loss of favor, those hindered prayers we talked about, maybe less victory in other areas of life. Unity between husband and wife is presented as really key for God's power to flow.
And there's that legacy piece, too. This isn't just about the two of you in the here and now.
Not at all. Covenants have generational impact. How you navigate your marriage, whether you fight for it according to God's design, directly affects your children, your grandchildren, the whole family line. You're building or breaking patterns for the future.
Wow. And maybe one of the toughest parts, marriage really holds up a mirror to your own stuff, doesn't it? Your own sin.
Doesn't it, though? It's almost impossible to hide. Living that close to another imperfect human being means their flaws inevitably expose your flaws.
Like their selfishness triggers my pride, or my control issues trigger their fear.
Exactly. It's like sandpaper on sandpaper sometimes. But that friction, that's actually God's grace. Marriage is perhaps the most effective environment God designed for our sanctification, for making us more like Jesus. It forces us to confront our junk, rely on His grace, and learn to love unconditionally.
Because your spouse won't meet every condition you might want to set.
Precisely. So conflict shifts from being just a problem to being an opportunity to grow, to forgive, to extend grace, to become more Christ-like.
That reframes the struggle significantly.
It does. And humbling yourself, owning your part, even when you feel wronged. That can create the safety your spouse needs to heal and grow too. It builds a much deeper, more resilient love over time than just avoiding conflict.
Okay, what about people listening who aren't married yet? Or maybe they're newly married and feeling overwhelmed. How do you even prepare for this kind of covenant?
That's a great question. And the honest answer is you can never be fully prepared until you're actually in it. Someone said the best preparation for marriage is getting married.
Huh. Okay, fair enough. But surely there's some wisdom for before.
Oh, absolutely. Foundational things like build a strong friendship first. Seriously. Physical attraction might fade, romantic feelings ebb and flow, but a deep, genuine friendship, that's the bedrock that lasts through decades and challenges.
Makes sense. What about the dating process itself?
Be intentional. Date with purpose. Not necessarily knowing on date one if you'll marry them, but being open and exploring. Is this someone I could potentially build a God-honoring covenant life with? And crucially important, don't act like you're married before you are.
Meaning?
Don't treat them like your spouse emotionally, physically, or even functionally before you've made those public binding vows before God and community. Guard your heart and guard theirs.
This touches on sensitive areas, like waiting for physical intimacy until marriage.
It does. And there's profound wisdom there. God designed sex for the unique, committed, secure context of covenant marriage. Waiting protects that incredible gift from comparison, from potential hurt, from being separated from lifelong commitment. It allows you a lifetime within the covenant to learn and explore that intimacy together, exclusively.
And even if someone listening hasn't had a perfect past in that area.
Grace covers the past. The choice now is to honor God's design for marriage moving forward, to reserve that ultimate physical union for the covenant itself.
What about things like living together before marriage?
Again, wisdom points towards honoring the unique status of marriage. Living together beforehand can blur lines, create temptations, diminish the significance of the actual wedding vows, and honestly give a false picture of commitment, because the door is still technically open. It's about respecting the sanctity and weight of the covenant you're preparing to enter.
Okay. Let's talk about legacy again, especially for those who maybe didn't have a great model growing up, maybe came from broken homes.
That's a painful reality for so many. And it can feel like you're set up to fail. But here's the incredible hope. Your primary model isn't your flawed earthly parents or grandparents.
It's Jesus.
It's Jesus. You look to Him. How did He love? How did He lead? How did He sacrifice? How did He forgive? Anchoring your marriage, your parenting, everything to His example. That's how you break negative generational cycles. You could build a completely new godly legacy, regardless of your background, by fixing your eyes on Him.
That offers so much hope. It reminds me of that analogy about leftovers. No matter what state your marriage feels like it's in right now, maybe messy, maybe broken.
God can take what's left. He can take the scraps, the mistakes, the hurt. He can chop it up, add his power, his grace, his spirit, and he can make something truly beautiful and nourishing out of it. It might not look like plan A, but it can still be amazing.
That's a powerful closing thought for that section. Okay, so wrapping this up. The main takeaway here is that Christian marriage isn't just a social contract. It's designed by God as this powerful, lifelong covenant.
Right. Not just between husband and wife, but crucially, with God woven into the very fabric of it.
And yes, it demands that difficult sacrifice of self, that dying to our own wills.
But that sacrifice isn't an end. It's actually the pathway to resurrection, to deeper intimacy, personal growth, discovering real joy, and experiencing God's richest blessings. It's His design, ultimately for our good and absolutely for His glory.
So here's something maybe to chew on as you go about your week. If Christian marriage is truly meant to be a living picture of the gospel reflecting Christ's sacrificial, unwavering love for His church, how is your marriage right now painting that picture for the people around you?
That's a challenging question, but hopefully an inspiring one too. And remember, you don't have to figure this out or do it in your own strength. It's impossible. But with God's Spirit empowering you, choosing this covenant path, day by day, even when it feels impossibly hard, it is possible.
Yeah. Don't settle for the world's flimsy contract idea when God offers something so much stronger and richer. Lean into His design.
We really encourage you, maybe this week, just think about one small way you could shift your thinking or actions, just one tiny step away from a contract mindset and towards a covenant mindset in your relationship.
Maybe even talk about it with your spouse, if that feels right.
Thank you so much for tuning in and joining this conversation here at the Healthy Relationship Plug.
We really hope this has been encouraging and maybe sparks some fresh perspective. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss our next conversation. We'll keep unpacking ways to help your relationships thrive God's way. We'll see you next time.